Hello, my name is Pickle. I am broadcasting from the official queer comedy green room, aka my shower. I've got some fabulous amenities. I have a LaCroix with my aluminum straw, of course, and some carrot sticks, and I am just back here getting ready to interview some amazing queer comedians. They are on the other side of this door in the staging area, aka my living room. We have some of my absolute favorite queer comedians in the house today. We have Aaron Foley, we've got Margaret Cho, Gina Yashere. It's going to be so much fun. So I'm going to interview these fabulous, fabulous ladies of the stage. Oh, fuck me, my LaCroix. Okay, that's fine. Oh, what a treasure. I want to thank Here TV, the Fight Magazine in Wehoville, for presenting this Our Pride while we are safer at home. I hope you're not coughing on any elderly people. I hope you're wearing your mask when you go in public, and I hope that you are spreading lots of queer love. This Pride season may be on lockdown, but it's going to be major. So I'm going to step into this fabulous room. Uh-oh, here we go. This incredible engineer turned star comedian currently has 4 Netflix specials, 2 of which are streaming, Laughing to America and Skinny Bitch. She is regularly featured as the British correspondent for The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, and she is one of the creators and stars of the new hit CBS sitcom Bob Hart's Abishola. She is a 4-time winner of Best Comedian from the UK Black Entertainment and Comedy Awards. Please help me welcome the phenomenal Gina Yashere. Hello. Smoke signals, you appear, you come up with an elevator out of the floor. Here she is. Yeah, like you talking about your mother standing up in the audience.
Yeah,
There's
a video of it and everything.
Dying. Well, jumping right in, what a time to be alive. I want to know, how are you doing through all of this between the global pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement? And I want to know, just to jump right in, what are your hopes in regards to this movement specifically affecting the world of comedy? As someone who's succeeding in comedy right now, how are you hoping this will affect that world?
I'm just hoping more people get to tell real stories from different perspectives, and that more people of color will be able to get into the higher echelons of the entertainment industry, from the showrunners to the producers to the writers to the creators, all of that. So basically, we can all tell our stories. And that's what I'm hoping, that it becomes a lot more diverse, really diverse, and that you can get a lot more stories out there. So that is my hope. And I'm thinking my show is already on the vanguard, the front of that train to diversity, you know?
Yeah, totally. And I hope that as well. And something I love about your comedy, your solo comedy, and then we'll get into Bob Hart's Abishola, of course. But something I love about your solo comedy is how personal and intimate it is. Like, you always, from what I've watched, you start from a personal experience or story, and you move from there. So I want to know, when you're building that material, what is your process? Do you kind of start by thinking of a story from your life, and then you kind of build in the jokes, or do you, like, what is your process for building that material for an audience?
My process is kind of just throwing it in there. So when something happens, sometimes I'll just make a note of it, and it might stay in that note for a year before I do anything with it. And sometimes if I'm doing like a longer set where I'm doing an hour and I've really got time to play and experiment and really try new things, I'll just throw a story in there in the middle. So I'll start with a piece of material that's tried and tested, that I know kills it every time. And then so just to get the audience to trust me, get on side, know that they're going to have a good time. Then once I get them laughing, I get them trusting me, I'll throw in a story. I'll just, this happened to me the other day, and then I'll just start building on it. And if it gets a good reaction, I've got a very good memory in that I remember it and go, okay, I'll try that again on the next show, and then add a little bit more to it. And it's like polishing a diamond. So originally it's just a piece of black coal, you throw it out there, and then you polish it a little bit, and then you polish it again, and then you polish it on the next show. And that's basically how I build my stories and material, by just throwing it in and seeing if it'll sink or swim.
Since it's something that just seems so natural to you, can you tell me about your decision to move from engineering, which is such a funny story with the clown shoes and your mom? Um, what was there a specific event that triggered that shift, or was comedy something you would always wanted to pursue and you kind of had to build up the courage? Like, what was that? What did that event look like?
Well, people always told me I was funny. People always told me I was funny. I was one of those kids at school that used comedy as a way to deflect, or a way to stave off confrontation, or just to make friends. It was, that was a personality thing. And people were always telling me I was funny, but I didn't think, I could make a living out of it. Those people on that I saw on TV were people on TV. They weren't regular humans to me, so it was never an option. And even when I was younger, I remember a teacher at my school who was a drama teacher came to my mum at a parent-teacher conference and was like, your daughter's, she's got a talent. She should be in the arts. She should be an actor or something. And my mother looked her dead in the eye and said, you know what, my daughter can act like a doctor until she becomes a doctor. And that was the end of that discussion. So I never considered it as anything that I could do. What happened, I was working in engineering for several years, and my last job was working for a company called Otis, who build elevators and
Mhm.
escalators. And I was their first female engineer in their 100-year history in the UK. Now that sounds fantastic, but it really was not as good as it sounded, because as the first woman and a black woman to boot, I went through a baptism of fire. A
Wow.
lot of misogyny at work, a lot of racism. I'd come into work and somebody had hung a banana skin above my clothing, that kind of thing. It was very overt, very aggressive, very violent kind of racism. I stuck it out because I was like, I'm not going to let these people drive me out of this job. But after 4 years in uh, the company itself didn't really know what to do with me as a woman. I was there first, and I looked good on their brochures, and it looked good for me to go. Oh, look, we got a black woman, our first engineer, but they didn't know what to do with me, and there was a lot of problems getting the promotions that I should have got with the qualifications that I'd gained. So after 4 years, I was like, I'm tired now. I'm tired of fighting this. I've done what I'm going to do. I want out.
Mhm.
And at the time, they were making engineers redundant because there was a building slump
Mhm.
in the industry. The building industry went through a slump in the mid 90s. They were making people redundant. They were never going to make me redundant because I was their token black girl. But I went into my manager's office and I was like, listen, I'm done with this. You need to lay me off. Give me a little payoff and let me go, because I'm tired of this company and the way you're treating me. And if you don't want me to go public with this, just let me go. And they did. And so I got the summer off. And it was in that time that I was like, well, people have always told me I was funny. Let me try this comedy thing that everybody's been telling me that I should be doing since I was 12 years old. And I did, long story short, did a couple of open mics, and it just went from there. And I just never ended up going back to engineering. That was it.
Speaking, we kind of touched on this earlier. So Bob Hart's Abishola. I want
Yes,
to also, Eddie G, who
I
I know
love
Eddie
Eddie.
G.
That is Eddie G is my heart right there.
He is a family friend of my family, and what other kind of family friend would he be? And he is such a treasure. So I was so excited to see that he was one of the creators. Obviously, for those of you watching who don't know, Eddie G is creator of many successful shows, Two and a Half Men, the sitcom Mom. He's really a sitcom
Yeah,
connoisseur and has been
yeah.
such a cool guy, such a good mentor to me, and I'm sure to you. So can you
Oh yeah.
Tell me about the development of the series and what influenced your desire to tell that story.
Well, it's a really funny story how it came about. So basically, I got a call in summer 2018. I got a call from my agent saying Chuck Lorre wants to meet you, and I was living in New York at the time. So it's like, Chuck Lorre wants to meet you. You're gonna have to fly to LA to meet Chuck Lorre. So I fly to LA. I walk into a room, and it's Chuck, Eddie Gordetsky, and Al Higgins, who are the two main guys who kind of make all his shows with him. I walk into the room, I sit down, we have a chat for a little bit, and Chuck says, okay, here's what we want. This is why we brought you here. I've got an idea for a TV show. Nothing's written down yet. We don't even know if we're going to make it, but it's an idea. It's about a white guy who goes into hospital having had a heart attack and falls in love with his Nigerian nurse. And I'm like, okay, so what? Do you want me to play the Nigerian nurse? And Chuck says, not necessarily. So I'm like, well, why am I here? What have you brought me here for? So basically, they brought me there as a consultant. They were like, look, we're three white guys. We can't write this show. We can't write this show. We need somebody from a Nigerian or African background who can help us with this, and we'd like you to come in and sort of consult on the show. So originally, I was brought in as a consultant. I was very skeptical at first, but I thought, all right, I'll give it a go and see. And I got in a room with them, and I kind of fell in love with all three of the guys. I fell in love with them. I was like, these guys really want to make a good show. They're listening to my suggestions. They're taking this very seriously. So I started really putting my all into it, helping them create characters, talking about stories from my childhood, that kind of stuff. And then after a few days, they were like, Chuck was like, can you stay and help us actually create the show? We want you to actually become a co-creator and producer of this show, because we can't do this without you. So that's basically from being brought in for a meeting to co-creator of this show was a matter of days.
Wow.
And so I'd flown in from New York to LA for a meeting. I had like 1 day's worth of underwear, and I ended up staying nearly 3 weeks to write this pilot. So I had to buy a lot of new underwear after washing the same underwear for 3 days. So basically, and that's what happened. We wrote the pilot, we gave it to the CBS, and CBS loved it, and the rest is history. We made a show, and I basically wrote myself in as Abishola's best friend, because I've always wanted to be the funny best friend in a sitcom. So obviously, if I'm in the room writing these scripts with these guys, I'm obviously going to put myself in there, which is exactly what I did.
And funny best friend is like the role, right?
It's
like,
the role. It's
like,
the best. No pressure. It's not my show. I just come in.
Funny lines.
Yep.
That's phenomenal.
Exactly.
So you mentioned earlier, like this show really, beyond being a successful and funny and heartwarming show, does represent a step forward in the diversity of storytelling. So I want to know, because we're in this historic moment, where there's this very tangible, palpable change in the air surrounding dialogue around race specifically, what would you say to a young aspiring Black comedian or queer comedian who is looking forward early in their career? What is something you would say, maybe not even necessarily advice, but something you would say to them that is different maybe from what you would have said before?
For me, I'd say live in your truth. Be 100% you. Because when I first started out doing comedy, I wasn't. I was firmly in the closet. I did not talk about my sexuality for the first 15 years at least of doing comedy. I used to just bypass that question. It helped and hindered me in certain ways. Helped me in that it made me think outside of the box as far as material was concerned, because I'd be like, well, I can't do the relationship stuff because I'd be lying if I was talking about sleeping with men, because I don't really. So I'm gonna have to do material from a different perspective. So I was doing other stuff. So it helped me in that way, but in another way, it hindered me in that I was never got completely honest with an audience. I was never completely myself on stage because I was always hiding an aspect of my life
Mhm.
from my audience. And so my thing would to any comedian started out: be yourself, be 100% yourself. Do not be afraid, to be yourself. It will all come through in the end, because the day I started being completely 100% myself on stage, it was so freeing,
Mhm.
and it made me so much better as a performer, because all those shackles had fallen off, and I was free in the fact that I was like, I don't care what anybody thinks of me. I'm just gonna be me. Take it or leave me. Take me or leave me. So that's what I would say to anybody starting out. Just be 100% yourself. Be living your truth.
Love that. Thank you so much for joining me today. One last thing, is there anything you want to plug? I mean, we talked about a lot of your work right now, but is there something that we missed that you want people to check out?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm writing my memoir right now. I'm writing a book that's going to be
That's what
coming out.
okay, yes. What can you tell us about that?
Oh, it's about my life. So I don't know where I'm going to end it, because so many stories. I've got so many stories. As I started writing this book, I was like, holy shit, I have had a very I've had a lot of life, put it that way. So I'm writing this book. Basically, it starts with me being born and raised in London of Nigerian immigrant parents, and trying to and not feeling like I belonged anywhere, because I was a child of immigrants, but I didn't fit in with the other black people in England because they were from a Caribbean background and the cultures were different. So I didn't fit in with white people, didn't fit in with the other black people, didn't fit in with Nigerians because I was born in England. So I was a child of nowhere. So I talk about that, and how that affected me growing up, and how I then, get into engineering, schooling, comedy, and then how my dream from the age of 4 years old has been to come and live in America, because I always thought that America had the better candies, the better bikes, the better everything, and I finally succeeded. This is living in the States, despite the
Living the
issues and the
dream.
problems that we're having right now. Living in the States has been a dream of mine since 4 years old. So basically, that's kind of what the book's about. So it's coming out next year. I'm writing it now, just about finishing the first draft. So make sure you guys follow me on all the Instagram at Gina Yashere. It's all my name. Or go onto my website and join my mailing list, and you'll probably get snippets of the book, baby, before everybody else. There'll be some free copies. I'm always giving away free stand-up specials and things like that, and giving away money on Venmo when I feel like it. So you join me. Come join the gang.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gina Yashere. I cannot wait to read your book, and I cannot
Thank you for having me.
continue seeing the heights that Bob and Hearts Abishola are going to go to.
Thank
I
you.
hope you have a beautiful night, and
Thank
thank you for
you.
telling us Happy Pride.
Happy Pride to you. You look amazing, by the way.
Thank you. All right, have a good night.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Our next guest is an incredible comedian who is a fourth year communication studies student and first openly transgender RA at UCLA. She is an activist both on and off campus, was a finalist for the Uncle Clyde's comedy contest for Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank, and first runner up for Miss Quest 2017, a transgender advocacy pageant. Please welcome Cara Chang. Hello, Cara. How are you
Hi, thank
today?
you. Doing amazing, thank you.
With the pandemic and an enormous social movement happening, how do you find yourself approaching your comedy differently in this period of time? Like how are you seeing that develop and seeing that affect your comedic voice and how you'll be moving forward as this moves on?
Right. So I think a good comedian doesn't tell jokes. A comedian really tells their story. And so, with just everything that's happening in the world, 2020, we are essentially living through the Hunger Games. It's an unprecedented time, and as long as I've been alive, it's been the worst time that we've seen in history. And so there's definitely a lot of darkness. But at the same time, in the darkness, we definitely can find that light. And so just realizing that and amplifying our voices, these are things that we have always been aware of, but the fact that things are finally, coming to a head, really just, yeah, being aware of what's happening in the world, addressing it, acknowledging it, but coming from a place of frivolity.
And you mentioned earlier that you think that, a good comedian really tells their story. So how do you build on your own story to deliver to an audience?
Right. So a big reason why I started comedy in the first place is because I realized that just looking at the entertainment industry, there just wasn't anyone who quite looked like me. And that wasn't even as an Asian American. That wasn't even as a queer Asian American. It was, as a queer Asian American trans woman. And so I feel like in the past couple of years, trans has always been a topic that has been kind of taboo, or, it's kind of been like a hot topic issue for these past couple of years. But at the same time, um, realizing that um, there was no one out there really telling my story, and realizing that if it wasn't me, who else was it going to be? If not me, then who? If not now, then when? And so really just looking at my past experiences, how I grew up in Texas, and just really honing in on that. Um, a lot of times when people make jokes, especially when it comes to trans jokes, people think that, oh, they're gonna go for the cheap shot, or it's gonna seem like they have an edge or something. But at the same time, it's like I'm there to hold people accountable. But you know what? This is what y'all are thinking, but I'm gonna come out and say it. And you know what? We're going to laugh at it, and that's okay. And it's going to be uncomfortable because that's what humor is. Humor comes from a place of discomfort. And so just taking my experiences, taking that discomfort and taking that pain and finding a way to laugh at it, especially living through these unprecedented times, we need a good laugh, because without a sense of humor, we're not going to get anywhere.
What are some comedians or some shows or anything that did influence you, that did inspire you to think, wow, comedy is something that I want to do. Comedy is how I want to tell my story. Because maybe you weren't seeing people tell your story, but you saw comedy, correct me if I'm wrong, as the way that you wanted to tell your story. So what were some things that influenced you to be drawn to comedy in the first place?
Um, Besides realizing that on YouTube and Instagram that there are a lot of beautiful trans women, and that Pretty was already taken, so I had to be the funny one. Margaret Cho was definitely a big influence of mine. With the work that she did in like the 90s and the 2000s, just talking about her experiences as a queer woman, but also with gay men. At the time, identifying as a gay man, like especially in Texas, you're going to grab onto the things that you can, when it's like slipping through your fingers, what you can find, you're definitely going to take. And so Margaret Cho was definitely an inspiration of mine. Ali Wong was a really big inspiration of mine. With very crad and crude um, with very crass and crude humor, but at the same time weaving in her experiences as having gone through a miscarriage, having gone through pregnancy, and just also just talking about discrepancies about how people of different races are treated differently, even if it is Asian versus white.
Mhm, totally. Um, do you have a specific memory of a moment where you were like, uh, comedy is what I want to do? Like maybe after you performed or before you performed, like do you did you feel that it was you came to it gradually, or do you feel like there was kind of an aha eureka moment with it?
I think Ali Wong's comedy special definitely to realize that there was literally an auditorium full of people that are there literally just to hear your story. Who doesn't like being the center of attention? And so, even looking at that and realizing that I had a very unique lived experience that not many people can speak to, and to realize that I could be that person, that I could be really putting a face to an issue, and I could be really giving a voice to a community of people that have been systemically silenced.
Yeah. So this is a Pride event, obviously. Happy
Yeah.
Pride.
Happy
What is
Pride.
something that you are proud of yourself for today?
What am I proud of myself for today? Coming from a place called Sugarland, Texas, and making it to LA. I definitely didn't think I was necessarily going to make it this far. But, having just overcome so much adversity, I grew up getting death threats. I grew up with a lot of negativity, a lot of people telling me that I was never going to amount to anything. And so they say that success is the best revenge to make your haters your motivators. And so being able to come out to the big world of LA, being a queer, proud, and trans woman, that is the biggest middle finger up that I can ever say to any of my haters. So I'm here, I'm queer, I'm not going anywhere.
Amazing, amazing. Is there anything you miss about, so you said Sugarland? That's where you're from? It's called Sugarland?
Sugarland, Texas.
Sugarland, Texas. Is there
Yeah.
anything that you miss about Texas? Like, what's something that you really like about Texas?
I definitely like me some good Tex-Mex.
Okay.
Yes, but honestly, it's just the people, my chosen family that I did have back in Texas. I think that we're at home wherever we are. And so, as much as I look back at my time in Texas, and there was a lot of pain, as I had previously discussed, there was also a lot of love there. And you know what? I wouldn't trade my negative experiences, positive or negative, I wouldn't trade those for the world because they really formed and shaped me to be the strong woman that I am today.
What a wonderful note. On that note, I want to thank you so much for sharing your experience with us, Cara. You are a treasure. I am so excited to see what you do in the coming months. I'm so excited. I'm a new big fan. And I want to know, where can people find you and what do you want them to do when they find you?
Honestly, just visit me on my Instagram at Courageous. That's spelled Karageous, and follow me along for the journey. Happy
Yes.
Pride.
Thank you. Happy Pride. I hope you have a beautiful day. I hope you're staying safe and healthy. And keep shining that bright light of yours.
Thank you. Thank you,
All right.
Pickle.
Our next guest is a celebrated comedian who has been featured on Conan, Arsenio Hall, and Chelsea lately, as well as delighting audiences across the country and beyond with her tours and podcast, Sports Without Balls. Please welcome the acerbic wit of Erin Foley. Hello.
Hello.
Now you're in the room.
In the room. We're in the room. Acerbic wit. I got to write that down.
Wit. I have to say, jumping right in, acerbic stuck out to me when I was reading your bio. Acerbic wit. What a fun word.
Is that in my bio?
Yeah, it is. And it really does reflect in your work. Something I love about your comedy is that you're so observant and critical, which is hilarious. Where does that acerbic perspective kind of come from? Do you find that when you're exploring material, you start kind of with a critical eye and go from there? Or like, what is your process for building that material?
First of all, I don't know who wrote my bio, but I have to pay them more because acerbic. I'm going to try to use that in a sentence pretty much every day for the rest of my life. Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of things just make me laugh. Like, I think when situations are really serious and they don't need to be, I'm just like, oh, can we just go from here to here? You know what I mean? Like, it's just well, we're in a pandemic. Life is hard. So yeah, I think it probably started there. And then, it's sort of like a muscle. Then you're going through life and your lens is like, oh, wait, okay, that could be funny, or that, you know what I mean? And then you just start kind of breaking down things in parts, and you're like, okay, well, that's stupid, that's ridiculous, that, you know what I mean? And then it just becomes kind of second nature.
Totally. So do you find that like you'll think of something, you'll crack yourself up or something about something, or something will make you laugh, and then you kind of build a punchline around that? Or do you kind of like do you talk to yourself? Or like, I'm always so curious, like, what the, are you crazy?
I'm great. I mean, yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where from the outside it seems like I'm an insane person, like we're like comedians are insane people, but it's really nerdy. It's actually quite nerdy. There's so much writing and rewriting and looking at a situation and being like, okay, well, that part is funny. Can I create, a lot of times you just step in these situations, like everybody steps in ridiculous situations all the time, but I think as comedians you just go, oh, oh, I can use this, or I can, part of this was ridiculous. So I think there's just humor and ridiculousness everywhere. We just have a pen and paper and an obsessive mind to, write it down and then tell strangers. So it is a little crazy, but like, I think if I had to work a 9 to 5 job, I would be, I'd probably be, have a flask in my bag and be a fucking insane person. So, can I swear? I don't know.
I haven't gotten a straight answer on that.
We can bleep that out. But
Okay.
yeah, so it doesn't. I don't feel crazy, but maybe on the outside it looks crazy.
I love that. A lot going on right now in the world.
What do you mean?
I'm sorry. What do you mean? It really does feel like 2020 is sort of that Netflix episode of Black Mirror, Choose Your Own Adventure, and God is just kind of watching, just like, go down that hallway, go down that hallway. So how are you kind of feeling in relation to but there's a lot of different things happening. It's like a lot of negative and also a lot of positive and just like a big moment of change. There's, the pandemic, there's the racial injustice issues being brought up. There's the monumental Supreme Court decision regarding LGBTQ plus rights. Like, where do you find yourself in all that? And how do you kind of put yourself in the world in relation to those things?
It's overwhelming. It's really like, I'm just so grateful. We're like yesterday. Okay, so we're recording this yesterday. We got the news from the Supreme Court decision, and it felt like the good ones needed a victory. You know what I mean? It felt like, oh, at least one marginalized community has their day in court. Like, I was just saying, like, this is a ruling for on its feet, like just basic human decency, and we have to. Basic human decency was voted on in the Supreme Court level. Like, that to me is mind blowing. But at least it went our way. Oh, you can't be a complete lunatic at work.
No,
Oh, quite cool.
Isn't it bizarre that like
it's bizarre?
It's like a victory, but it's actually just like, oh, cool. Like, they're not gonna like kill us.
Yeah, they're not gonna fire me because I went home and
for no reason
shagged my wife. Okay,
and they're like, it's a victory.
But it's
look
so
what we've done for you.
It's so bad right now that we were like, yeah, I can't be fired. That's a crappy job I don't want. Woohoo! Like, nobody's working and you can't be fired. Yeah, like, you're like, what? Like, it's so bad that like that was so hopeful and exciting. But yeah, I mean, I think as just a human being, as a writer, as a performer, I feel smack in the middle of it all. I feel helpless, and I also feel useful if I'm doing something with comedy or writing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was unfortunate. Hold on one second. Decline. I didn't realize that my phone now is hooked up my computer or something. But yeah, it feels crazy, right? It feels. It feels like the best of times and maybe the worst of times and maybe the best of times if there are pockets of like intense silver linings, like the fact that this pandemic has really pushed everybody to their breaking point as humans, and then you see the racial injustice which happens 24 hours a day for the last 7,000 years, and it maybe be like this might be the it sent everyone over the edge, and now everyone's like losing their minds, and like that can be so impactful. So you think, okay, that's a silver lining. The Supreme Court justice on Monday was a silver lining. I don't know. I find myself, I don't know about you, I'm like grasping at silver linings. Like, I just discovered Bosch. I just did 5 seasons of a police procedural on Amazon that I never would have watched. Okay, like literally, like anything. Like you're just trying to like grasp at straws.
Totally. And then speaking of silver linings, on a lighter kind of note, you host a celebrated podcast, Sports Without Balls. Can you talk about how that started? What inspired you? Have you always loved these kinds of sports? Have you always been a sports person, or is this kind of just something that you wanted to share?
Yeah, it's I've been doing it for quite a while now. I love sports so much. I love, 24 hours a day. I've like in LA, it's a little bit different because I grew up on the East Coast in New York, and so everyone's like in its sports lunatic. Out here, it's not so much. So I've just started like I was just like trapping people at parties and making them talk sports with me, and they're like, "Why don't you maybe talk into a microphone about it?" So I was like, "Okay, that's healthier." Um, but yeah, so I did that for about 4 or 5 years. I put it on pause about 6 months ago because I got hired to be a writer on One Day at a Time.
Oh,
Um, yes,
congratulations.
I'm very excited. So we had, of course, put production on pause, but we got 6 episodes out. We have an episode out coming out tonight.
Tell me
So
about that. Tell me about writing for that and how
yeah,
that has changed your comedy and
yeah. Yeah, the sports thing I'm going to jump back into, but it just became, 40 plus 58 plus hours a week writing, and it was a dream job, and I'm just pray to God that we get picked up for season 5 and we can complete season 4 because um it's a reimagined series of the original One Day at a Time, but this is a Cuban American family living in Echo Park, which
Mhm.
is so cool. So it's an immigrant family story. Their daughter's gay, so I'm like, it's a dream show. So and then being able to be around the table with 10 other hilarious people. I miss them, yeah, every single day. So it was a blast.
What is that process like? Like, because it's a sitcom, right? So
Yeah.
it's, you know, you're all working very collaboratively, writing very collaboratively. Do you find that is easier than writing solo material, or do you find that it is just different, or like what are the challenges?
Yeah, the stand up is great and I want to do it forever, but like it gets lonely, like you're up there by yourself, you're touring by yourself. If you ask any female stand up comic, it's like you're basically on the road by yourself with a bunch of dudes. It's not, I mean, I love performing and I love being in these different cities, but it's not glamorous. It's
Mm.
it's hard. So going into a job, meanwhile, never had a day job before ever in my life. I mean, why would I? So going into a job and you're sitting around the table with 10 other people that are hilarious and fun and, just open minded and progressive. It was so fun.
This is a Pride event. So you're like, what's Pride? This is a Pride event. So I wanted to ask you, what is something that you are really proud of yourself for today?
Um, I think I've been doing stand up for about 20 years, and then year maybe 6, I decided to be out and gay. And I probably would have done it from day one, but I was really young and I wasn't really out in my personal life. So I think, 13 or 14 years of being an out comic and performing in small towns, you're welcome, across America, and always and being out and being gay and being super proud on stage, and then I run a show at the Hollywood Improv once a month for the last 10 years called Gays Are Us.
Hmm.
So I think really putting myself out there as a comic, first of all, I'm proud of, but as a gay comic in areas and stages that probably aren't even remotely welcoming, I think I'm most proud of that.
That's amazing. I want to thank you for talking with me today. It's such a treat. I wish we had more time. Um, I do want to know, is there anything that you want to plug?
I
Anything
would
from you?
say, yeah, I would just say One Day at a Time. There's 7 episodes. You can go on Pop TV. You can go on the app or the channel, and they replay them. And then hopefully, the pandemic will at least subside to a stage where we can shoot the other 6 to wrap up season 4. But
Totally. It seems like the
yeah.
government is getting bored of it. So
Oh, I mean, come on, wear a mask, don't whatever, do whatever you want,
they're like, okay, this has been long
Yeah.
enough.
It's so ridiculous. Well, I'm your new fan, Pickle, and I'm gonna follow you and see you
You
wherever you
too.
are.
I can't wait until we're back doing live things. I'll have to check out Gays R Us. And that's at the Hollywood Improv.
That's at the Improv. It will resume at some point to be the first Wednesday of every month. So
I love that.
yeah, and then you're in are you in WeHo performing?
I do all the shows at Flaming Saddles, so knock on wood. Hopefully,
oh my God, I love
good
Flaming
again.
Saddles. All right, good. I'm gonna gently stalk you when we're back performing.
Awesome. Well, it was so lovely talking with you. Like, I get a restraining order immediately.
Pickle, it's Aaron. It's Aaron.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure talking with you. I hope you have an excellent stay in Waco. Is it pronounced Waco or Waco?
Well, it is pronounced Waco. But...
Waco. Well,
but you can pronounce it any way you want.
Whenever I go to say Waco, Texas, I'm like, it's Wacko.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's Waco. But yeah, be here for another couple weeks and then hopefully back to La La Land.
Totally. Have a beautiful Pride. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Love and light. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Our next guest is no stranger to speaking up and speaking out. This comedian has had audiences laughing since the early 90s. She has been honored by a plethora of organizations, including LA Pride, who gave her a Lifetime Achievement Award for leaving a lasting imprint on the queer community. She is also the host of her hit podcast, The Margaret Cho. Without further ado, although I could go on, it's the incomparable Margaret Cho. Yes!
Thank you. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride, right? It's Pride. Pandemic Pride. We're in it.
Pandemic Pride. We're in it, but we're in a very special moment, and I'm really excited about it. I think it's a really great time. It's come to a great time, and I mean, I don't know. It's a crazy time, but it's a really important time, and I'm really happy about it.
I agree. I was just remarking to someone, I was on a hike because I'm active. We were talking and I was like, what a time to be alive, you know, like we're so lucky to have been present for this moment, but politically and like it's like, wow, what a great opportunity to be a part of something.
Yes, it took our collective history coming together from all of these different perspectives. You know, I think all of us, I think it took social media. I mean, we all came to it from different points of view. I mean, I think social media brought us together and technology brought us together, but all of our disparate movements, I think from the Pride movement and from gay liberation, also from the Black liberation movement, from the Asian American liberation movement, from the women's liberation movement, and through, I think, well, we all drew from the Black liberation movement, from the civil rights movement, but it's like from that came everything else, and now we're going back to the Black liberation movement, which I think is really, really important. It's like, we didn't finish what we started. Like, we took so much from the Black liberation movement, but we didn't finish what we needed to do. Like, we took from them and we didn't complete it. And now we have to complete the journey, you know, with them.
Yeah, I love that. I agree. It's like, there's this, it's kind of been the ongoing one of the unresolved conflicts of this nation, where it was like, you know, it's literally built into the foundation and built into the Constitution. So it's like, we have to really take a hard look at ourselves, both as like individuals and as a collective, and like how we're participating and what we're doing and how it's kind of written in innately to like the literature.
Yeah.
Of kind of work this in here. I was reading Audre Lorde the other day. There's this great essay or speech, I think technically, called "The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House," and she talks about the feminist movement. Specifically, she says differences must not be merely tolerated, but seen as the fund of necessary polarities between which our creativity can spark like a dialectic. And she's like talking about how the things that make her different make her actually more connected to other people in the feminist movement. So it's like they cover more, you know, in the context, she was talking about how like we all in the feminist movement, our differences actually allow us to cover more ground and actually allow us to occupy more space. And I want to hear a little bit about, because your comedy is so intersectional. Like, you know, you always seem to really bring in all the different pieces of your identity to arrive at this punchline that is so unique to you, but also seems to speak to different communities. And I want to hear, like, are you really conscious about that when you make jokes and like when you write them, or do you think it kind of has evolved naturally over time? Like, do you have a process with that?
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you. That's wonderful. Well, I come from an era where all of those identities were really seen as a weakness, you know, because my emergence was in the 80s when quote unquote observational comedy, which we now look at as cis, male, white, straight comedy, was the gold standard. And so you were trying to navigate in a world where your performative whiteness was so valued. And so the more sort of generic you could be, and this was kind of like the era when sort of that generic kind of performative whiteness was really almost parody, you know, like you would have like sort of these things that you could buy in a store that would say like sort of like that yellow label so with the beer or whatever. And it was almost funny when things were generic, but people wanted that sort of idea of like generic whiteness because it almost was this thing like you were normal or that you were like that right class, like you were hitting that sort of average white state of being that was almost a like that stasis that where you were exactly the hitting the right note of like class, being, race, whatever, you know. And so being different really sore thumbed me like it and so then I kind of thought, well, why not just get really punk rock about it and be so uncomfortable with it, like let's just get super awkward and let's just take that the notion of being uncomfortable and being different and make it so overblown because I couldn't fit in any way. So I was just trying to see if I could fit in by not fitting in to the point of making it so overblown that maybe that's the way. And that seemed to work out better for me. So then the intersectionality just became a part of not fitting in, going the opposite direction of trying to fit in. So it was never intentional because we didn't even know what intersectionality was. But it was more like, okay, I guess it was just trying to be myself because that was all we had. And kind of I was growing up in San Francisco. My parents owned a gay bookstore, and there were the people that worked there who were all very young volunteers for Harvey Milk. They were going out and, you know, at the onset of like queer activism that I like knew early AIDS activism, early Queer Nation, ACT UP. There were different kinds of like very small kind of queer activist groups coming up. They were putting out zines and everything. So this was like the early part of my kind of awareness of queer activism, and also like going out to clubs and drag, and all of that was just like the beginning of my comedy.
I want to ask you about one of my favorite. 30 Rock is absolutely my favorite show of all time. And I wanted to ask about your character, which you played Kim Jong-il, right? Was a fictionalized sort of like child of a North Korean dictator. And I want to know, was that a character bit that then grew? Because the character ended up having like a whole arc and like kind of like a story. Like, did you all know, what was the experience like working on 30 Rock, first of all? And then did you know going in that that's where that character was going to go? Or was it just like really popular and they were like, oh, we want to expand on this character?
Oh, I didn't really know. I think that we didn't exactly know what was going to happen. And then I went in and then it was really popular. So they decided to bring it back. And then I played both Kim Jong-il and Kim Jong-un. So it was a couple of different times, but it was so fun. And I love Tina Fey, and it's a trip to do that show because everybody is just so welcoming and so fun, and you know, it's always interesting to do a show that you're a fan of, to step into the world of it, because you get to see all the sets, and so interesting.
I love that. What is a project that you're really amped up about now, or that you're working on, or that you're really excited about?
Well, there's a show that I do a podcast now, which is great. I love to record which is great. We can still do it in our kind of lockdown now, which has been really great. And so it's called the Margaret Cho, and so we talk to lots of different people. But that's been a really nice thing to do. I like podcasting because it's a kind of a thing that I've been doing since the beginning, like kind of the beginning of podcasting in 2012. So that's been really exciting. But right now it's kind of weird because it's like I haven't been able to do shows, and isn't it weird to not go out and do shows?
I have a couple more questions. One, apparently, and I talked to a professional astrologer about this. I like followed up on it. It's a very culty moment in the stars. And I am so curious, what the cult of Margaret Cho, which I would join, what would the uniform be? What would be like the number one rule? What would be like the food served every day? What's the cult of Margaret Cho?
I think like I think ice cream sandwiches.
Okay.
Definitely. Well, in cults, they often serve you a lot of sugar with not a lot of protein. That's a good way to make people listen to everything you say, because you're so apt to be weak and kind of listening. Like, so cults are like very apt to give you like a soft serve ice cream, like rolled in M&Ms. So that's something like if you have like so any kind of Cold Storm Creamery dish.
Ooh, I like that. Margaret, I like your synergy there. Very like, you've thought about this.
Yeah, anything ice cream rolled in candy, it's like, oh, that's a cult. Like anything that's served with like a lot of like candy and ice cream mixed together is like kind of, you're gonna be inducted. My thing, it's like probably like a worn rock and roll t-shirt. So any kind of like old concert shirt from like 1985, that would be the cutoff.
Okay, I love that.
So like all of my, it's like 85, like nothing after 1985.
Perfect.
Everything. So that's like the uniform. So, but before 1980 is probably the best. And then so that would be like the uniform, and like a long t-shirt is the best of all. So like the best uniform would be like a long, like a night shirt.
So like the top tier people, the like level 6 tons.
Yeah, the top like would have like a night shirt.
Like it would be like the size of the shirt, the length of the shirt
length would go like
would indicate your status within the cult.
Yeah, like a long, like a knees, like a, or you know, to the floor maybe even.
And you're in like a gown. You're in like a shirt gown.
Yes, like all
like
the way, almost like
tail.
that would be the best, like Osho, like from like
if you could star in any musical on Broadway, not like currently, but just any, they revive it just for you, what would you do?
They revive it. Gosh, I think, well, I do love Godspell. I would love to be a Jesus in Godspell. That would be a good one.
Oh, wow,
I think that would be really, really good. I think, God, it's a kind of my favorite because I do love a Stephen Schwartz thing. Like whether it's Pippin or I love Cabaret, of course, like Sally Bowles in Cabaret.
yeah.
But actually the MC in Cabaret is the killer role.
Oh,
All of the songs in Cabaret are great.
have you ever been approached to do Chicago? Have they ever like?
Oh, I love Chicago.
You would be such a
love
good like
Chicago.
Roxy, like.
I do. I do love Roxy. I love Chicago. Chicago's great. I've never been asked to do a musical, but I would love to do any of them.
Well,
I mean, they're all great.
Putting that energy out there.
Putting it out there.
Erica Jane's gonna step out of Chicago. You're gonna walk right in there. Margaret
that'd be so good.
Margaret Cho as Roxy in Chicago. It's been on Broadway for like a billion years. Like
I know,
feel like that's
so fun.
very accomplishable. So what is something that you are really deeply proud of yourself of, like right now? Like
I'm just proud to have lasted this long, to have come this far, to have remained an old progressive for this long, and to keep going and to keep on with this journey and to keep getting inspired by young people and young movements and to keep, like teachable and to keep moving. That's the thing. I think that's what keeps you young, is to keep listening and to keep learning. That's what's really great, is that we can still stay learning, stay young, and stay innocent in a lot of ways. And I love that.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Margaret. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Happy Revolution.
Happy Revolution. Yes, for real. This is great.
Yeah. And thank you for joining us. Such an honor,
Thank
such
you.
a privilege. I hope you have a beautiful day. Stay safe.
You too. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
I want to thank you all for joining us. The reason I love comedy is because it provides us with light in the darkness and connects us to the purest, most beautiful part of our individual selves. A good comedian takes their inner treasure and shares it with the world to spread joy and make life all the more livable. Comedy is also such an essential part of queer life, and I am honored to have shared time on this program with comedians who are upstanding examples of using their talent to enhance the queer experience. I hope you're finding light this Pride season, and I hope you use that light to illuminate injustice, to bring more joy into the world, and to celebrate your humanity. But most importantly, I hope you laugh. We need it. My name is Pickle, and from the bottom of my shriveled single heart, happy Pride. Don't drink and drive, and please don't cough on any elders.